Welcome, and thank you for watching. We're here to present results-driven project delivery, transforming objectives into outcomes at Brown University. I'm Bob Mancini, Director of Business Development at Ecosystem Energy.
And I am Michael Guglielmo, the Vice President of Facilities and Campus Operations, Brown University.
Thank you, Mike. I've had the pleasure of working with Brown for the past 32 years, 9 of which has been representing Ecosystem. I know Brown as a campus committed to achieving sustained energy and strategic long-term sustainability and resiliency goals through ongoing, integrated, and very systematic approaches. Over the next dozen slides, we'll cover their journey through 4 major milestone periods dating back to 2008, milestones that have contributed to their energy, decarbonization, and resiliency-related achievements. So before getting into the next milestone, Mike, help frame this up for the audience. Tell us about Brown's campus and then share some of the key information on your path to net zero.
Thanks, Bob. So just to provide some campus context. So for many of you that might not know, Brown is woven into the fabric of the city of Providence, Rhode Island. The majority of the campus is on the historic hill. And in the early 2000s, we expanded into what we refer to as the Jewelry District. College Hill is predominantly the home of the undergrad housing, classrooms, athletic facilities, School of Engineering, and the Perlman Arts District. The Jewelry District, which is also known as the Knowledge District, is the home of the Med School, School of Professional Studies, School of Public Health, and South Street Landing, the administrative hub of the university, and the future home of Danoff Labs. The campus is comprised of over 231 buildings, 7.2 million square feet, about 30,000 spaces, and 155 acres. What you'll see as I walk through today's presentation between Bob and I is how we have really attacked decarb along our journey.
So Mike, initiating this journey, can you describe the initial motivations and objectives that led to Brown University to embark on the decarbonization and energy conservation journey, and what were some of the key factors that influenced the decision-making at this stage?
Absolutely. So what this graphic really begins to outline is our path to net zero. And you can see when we were nearing our 2020 greenhouse gas goals, the question of what next arose. Brown recognized that the scientific consensus makes it clear that the only way to avoid the most catastrophic effects of climate change is for the world to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to zero as quickly as possible. Well, we believe we must lead by example in showing that large, complex institutions can develop clear and realistic paths towards net zero emissions. It's been a journey. It's been multi-phase, multi-stepped. But there were 2 guiding principles. One was, climate change commitment. We recognize it's our institutional responsibility to address climate change by reducing our carbon emissions and setting up leadership, example in higher education sustainability. Our first goal set in 2007 were to reduce our carbon footprint by 42% by 2020. Then in 2018, we updated our goals to achieve net zero by 2040 with a 25% reduction by 2025 based on our 2018 baseline. Some of the considerations, we knew net zero has to become the expected goal for higher ed institutions. Along the way, we've made significant investments in energy reduction and decarbonization, and we presented opportunities for building resiliency, modernizing campus infrastructure, and potentially lowering our long-term operational expenses.
So the first major milestone on the journey was the Thermal Efficiency Project, or the TEP. This was a transformational project for Brown, one in which stakeholder engagement was extremely important. It really was the main contributing factor, the thread that ran through the initial assessment, the design iterations, and throughout the entire project, all the way through the build. How did Brown identify and engage key stakeholders in the early stages of this project, and what types of strategies did you use to ensure their input and buy-in, and how their perspective shaped the project's objective? How did you manage all of that?
Great question, Bob. And with you being part of it, I think you saw it firsthand. But let me step back in time a little bit. Our initial efforts from 2008 to the mid-teens were really focused on one system or building at a time. And we were able to engage individual stakeholders with our normal project management process. However, with the thermal efficiency project, or TEP, as you heard Bob refer to it, it affected our entire college campus and significantly changed our heating operations. So you could say that everyone on College Hill was a key stakeholder, particularly our operations staff. Our operations staff, who's here 24/7, 365, but when the heat's on, they're working 24/7 over multiple shifts. So it was key to get their input to understand how they would operationalize this transformative project. So ecosystems, they engaged our operations staff at every level and even had a presentation and listening session where they brought the whole team together to review the agreed upon scope. Our staff felt engaged and heard. They actively supported the project, even though it caused a little chaos for a while. But the project left us in a much better and more efficient system. For the broader community, the project was designed to minimize impacts on building occupants. I'll give you one example. Our vivarium ecosystem converted the air handlers from steam, heat, to a bypass system and heat recovery with hot water coils using a series of 3 short outages. This was critical for us, knowing that we have 24/7 operation. We were very concerned with impacting research. And as a result of their strategy, research was not impacted. So great example of how this project truly engaged the campus community and had positive results.
So the title of our presentation, Results-Driven Project Delivery, Transforming Objectives into Outcomes. This really encompasses that title. So in this phase of the project, how did you define, I see here the different stakeholder groups. How did you define, how did those meetings, the collaboration among the stakeholders, define success in terms of outcomes, and what specific metrics were established to measure progress towards decarbonization and energy conservation outcomes?
Yeah, so with any project that we develop here, we have key project drivers, and you can see the project drivers that I'm not going to read them to you. You can quickly glance at them, but we had these project drivers. But what was most important were measurable outcomes that were going to impact our operations, our finances, and environmental. One thing that you'll hear throughout this presentation is the fact that we always look at how do we get the most for that $1 we're spending. And I think the TEP project was exactly representative of that level of impact across these operational outcomes.
Yep.
So in 2008, when we set this first goal for the greenhouse gas reduction to achieve by 42% reduction by 2020, we knew that success was always going to be defined by a great financial return coupled with good carbon reduction. But this project took it to the next level. Our sustainability team was able to finance all projects that met initial target internal rate of return. We had the measures, we had the funding. Our biggest pinch point often was the project throughput. And this is where I think ECO came to the table and really helped Brown. They found a way to cost justify a ton of gas savings. Even with the gas being cheap, we were able to accelerate our elimination of steam on campus through this innovative solution. Our $25 million thermal efficiency project probably completed 10 years of work in the span of 3 years. So you talk about minimizing the impact on campus, that's just transformative. And as mentioned earlier, this included work in the research facilities, including the vivarium. It was really an impressive, like we referred to, design build, but more importantly, a turnkey effort with a 7-year payback for the university. So some of these financial outcomes, as you can imagine, was critical to getting the approval to move forward with this project. So in summary, the performance-based contract where ecosystem guaranteed savings was truly a game changer for the university that proved dividends in the future of the university by lowering the overall temperature of water on campus.
Yeah, Mike, just a quick note on this to add. You define your outcomes in that left column. What were the overarching drivers that kind of got put in the center of the bullseye, and then through collaboration with the operations, facilities folks, and the financial folks, and then the sustainability folks, you were able to drill down even further on the most important outcomes, like what else should be in that bullseye? What else should that design be solving for? I thought one of the most interesting things that came out of that entire process was that near the end, the financial folks had an 8.5 IRR better. That hurdle had to be cleared, and in our due diligence, we found that 16.8 million in asset renewal. So that was really one of the keys to unlocking the full value of this project. We were able to really put a lot of scope into the project, knowing that you had nearly $17 million of avoided cost assets that needed to be renewed anyway, that were accounted for in the capital plan, that we pulled forward slightly as part of an accelerated asset renewal program. And through that design, we were able to accomplish a lot more.
That's exactly right, Bob. And I thank you for raising that once again. I'm so used to speaking about this project, I just take it for granted. But in almost any owner's perspective, being able to couple work that you already have to do and transforming the campus is where you get the most value for the dollar you're spending. And this just resonates throughout. And really, I set a high bar for the campus, knowing that we can be this innovative and creative and problem solving.
Yep, that was always a fun one for me. These next three slides, they cover the second major milestone, Scope 1 and 2 emissions. Mike, what can you tell us about this? Give us some examples of how collaboration among the different stakeholder groups and disciplines at Brown played a role in achieving this goal. What were some of the objectives? Who did you collaborate with, and how did you get there?
Absolutely. So here, just to remind everyone, kind of our goal pre-2018-19 was a 75% reduction by 2025 and carbon neutral by 2040. We had a pretty solid plan for all buildings that we refer to on loop. And those are buildings that are fed from our central heat plant. And we were going to move forward with building by building conversions. And then at the end of the day, we were going to convert the central heat plant to air source heat pumps. We knew at this point that our gas and electric footprints were about a 50-50 split. We knew the easy part was to offset electricity by purchasing renewable energy and retaining the RECs associated with that. The challenge for us was decarbonizing a campus built around fossil fuels and with so many individual buildings. So in developing our roadmap, we pulled together a committee of diverse stakeholders, including students, faculty, and staff with various backgrounds. We additionally had ecosystems at the table who had the expertise on really looking at the campus level, especially with their experience with the thermal efficiency project. They really knew what it took to look under the hood of our campus and understand how the virtual car runs, right? So how do we tap into that knowledge? This committee, along with ECO, developed an understanding of that high-level approach and impact to decarbonizing our campus. This also included a cost estimate. It focused on collaboration, inclusive project development, and a broad institutional support. Challenges were differing ideas of how quickly we could reach net zero and decarbonizing, and of course, the cost to decarbonize. Our initial plan had us taking it out to 2040 with thoughtful analysis of what was achievable from a campus disruption. We were considering what was the earliest we could feasibly decarbonize campus while maintaining expected operations. At the time, based on the estimated cost, it was determined that the 20-year span could absorb the cost, particularly due to utility savings from the renewable energy PPAs. Next slide.
So financial considerations, Mike, as you moved into the implementation phase, how did you navigate the financial constraints associated with operating electromechanical equipment?
Yeah, so, this is where I would have to say something very unique about Rhode Island, and we took advantage of the virtual net metering law. So Rhode Island passed this virtual net metering law that allowed nonprofits to enter into renewable PPAs, which ended up providing significant utility savings for the university. And what we did with that, we committed to funding the project with portion of those savings. In addition, we also committed to any new buildings would be 100% electric or net zero ready. While the vetting and implementation process of the PTAs was lengthy, we now have 100% of our electricity offset by renewable energy, and the majority of the project we are fully vested in. So in other words, we've taken advantage of this virtual net metering law, and we're taking the everyday utility costs and we're reinvesting that money into decarbonizing the campus. The magic now is figuring out how fast we can actually go.
Interesting. Any unexpected obstacles that came up in this process?
So addressing scope one has been really our biggest iterative journey. 51% of the campus is served by the central heat plant. You've heard me talk about that a few different times. Then we have 26% are independent boilers, and we have 23% that are boilers and facilities that are served by the central heat plant. What that means is those boilers are in place during the summer months when the central heat plant is down. All of these have to be addressed within our scope one solution. So over 4 to 5 years of planning, we have continued to learn and adapt to new information. The initial plan, as I had mentioned, focused really on electrifying the central heat plant and modifying central heat plant buildings. Within the study, the electrification of the central heat plant brought about challenges with noise, space, ice, water accumulation, all you can imagine with just trying to push that much energy into one location. Additionally, we knew the Jewelry District and independent boilers needed to be accounted for at some point. That was not considered in our initial plan.
So now that this one slide covers the third major milestone, which is an interesting one because clearly at this point you're on a great path, but really never to take your foot off the gas. This third leg of the journey proved to be extremely important for setting Brown up for the future success. You'd done a lot and you still needed to do a lot, but now it was even more important to become more strategic. So take us through this. Tell us what you did here to set yourself up for future success.
Absolutely. So here is what I would call the milestone or marker where we had so much information built up over the years. We had a pretty solid strategy, but as part of our intentional plan, do, check, adjust, we wanted to make sure we were heading down the right path. It was our period of updating it. So one of the key elements we did is we brought a group of individuals together, experts that we've worked with over the years. We held the DCOP Summit, or as we like to refer to also as a peer review. And during this, we really wanted to brainstorm about what we know about our campus, what are the potential solutions for decarbonization. And we also wanted to daylight, this was the first time on our journey, that we had a single point of failure with our supply and return line to the central heat plant. So we really had to think outside the box. Were we going to continue to build on what we refer to as 19th century technology with one pipe in and one pipe out to one single location on campus? Or was there a better solution that would satisfy for what we had, the single point of failure, and our goals of transforming the campus by 2040. Our initial approach of 3 to 4 firms working on different aspects of the plan without a lead engineering firm proved to be a lesson learned. A lot of great ideas, but there was no one that was stitching or orchestrating the whole effort. After a handful of months of working what I would call almost as individual silos, we pivoted to having one firm with broad-reaching skills and ability to think creatively and holistically lead the team of firms that specialize in particular areas of engineering. This was Ecosystem. They became our strategic partner, looking at how do we reimagine the campus with all this knowledge around the table. The deterioration of our high temp hot water line, while it was one obstacle, it really proved to be the canary in the proverbial coal mine. It gave us the foresight to ensure we have resiliency in our heating systems.
Like how was this received by senior leadership like President Paxson and the corporation? Like this is all part of continuous improvement. You didn't just have a plan that you did a while back and just kind of clutch to that plan. This is a truly continuous improvement. How was that received by senior leadership?
Not only was it received, it was expected. When we did our first roadmap back in the 18-19 period, we knew we'd be back to the table to truly look at what are we learning, what's going on with the IRA, what are the changes in technology, how has the campus continued to grow, have we set the system up. We also knew we had to come back and solve for the jewelry district buildings and the off-loop buildings. We had a pretty solid plan for what was on loop, but we were just scratching the tip of the iceberg on how we were going to solve for all those individual buildings and the jewelry district. So again, it was expected. They fully support it. And we know that this is something we will be continuing to do as we work on this project in the coming years.
It makes sense. So now we're entering into the fourth, the final milestone where everything that's been done up to this point rolls up to 2024 and brings together a comprehensive roadmap for all of your campuses, focus on addressing multiple important goals like decarbonization, resiliency, dorm AC, aging infrastructure, and optimizing CapEx spending while maximizing OpEx savings. How did you align all of these most important outcomes in this later stage? How did you ensure that the ongoing projects remain aligned with both the university's broader decarbonization goal and these specific outcomes that you're wanting to achieve?
Yeah, so the two key components to this. One was we really needed to address all Scope 1 emissions on campus. And as mentioned previously, we had a pretty well worked out plan for the College Hill on loop. We still needed to figure out what was happening with off loop, jewelry district. And we also rolled into this, how does this begin to address our long-term resiliency? As I had mentioned previously, we had the single point of failure with our central heat plant with the pipes coming in and out. But we're also considering climate change. As the summers have gotten warmer and the shoulder seasons have gotten warmer, we need to address dormitory AC. So, bottom line, we need to maximize our capital expenditure dollars across all these needs, not spending $1 individually, but spending $1 holistically. We made that commitment. We also made the commitment to formalize our climate change resiliency. And these discussions really led to an approach to decarb from the lens of resiliency. Additionally, we knew we had to address the JD and off-loop buildings. There was the event with the high temp hot water lines during this time that highlighted that need for heating resiliency. And as I mentioned on a previous slide, we retained Ecosystems to lead this effort. And we knew that they would take all this data and planning from the previous roadmaps and re-engineer the plan to include resiliency, south of the off loop, the JD, and look for opportunities within air conditioning our dorms.
So how do you measure the impact for something like that? Maybe you can talk about the methods you use to measure and report on the outcomes of your projects. Like what was some of the input from the stakeholders, that stakeholder engagement? How did that play into defining the process of measuring, and what were some of the key takeaways from the results?
Yeah, so this milestone, we are right in the midst of socializing the 2024 comprehensive roadmap. And what makes this one a little more unique than the last update is the fact that it's really a multi-phase plan that starts with projects that boost resiliency and reallocate capital expenditures on the aging infrastructure. It begins to implement the strategies that offer substantial emission reductions at the lowest cost per unit CO2 abated. And it also explores opportunities to leverage the decarbonization efforts to reduce the cost of adding air conditioning to several dorms. So what these images really begin to outline, if you look at the image to the left, we have what I call the single point of failure in the upper right-hand corner. And you can see what happens in a future state where that is decoupled from the balance of the campus. And we end up deploying over multiple phases these STEM facilities, which would allow us to have resiliency across the campus and also decarbonize along the way in this multi-phase plan. So getting that buy-in, socializing this, again, we're in the early stages of socializing this with senior leadership. We have some work to do around taking this conceptual plan and taking it to the next level of feasibility, which we're looking forward to do over the coming months.
Excellent. Final slide here, lessons learned. So looking back on your journey, what are some of the key lessons you would share you think are important for other institutions who are looking to accomplish some of the things you're accomplishing, and how do you envision the future of these efforts at Brown?
Yeah, so there's essentially five that I think about on a daily basis when it comes to our decarbonization journey. The first one goes back to the thermal efficiency project, where outcome-based, results-driven contracts lead to a highly collaborative strategies and solutions where we maximize limited funding. You know, Bob paused for a moment, and in the earlier slide where we were talking about we were going to allocate about $16 million worth of work and spending $7 million more, we were able to have a transformative project that was measurable with those specific outcomes that were absolutely fantastic for the university. The other aspect that we look at from a plan, do, check, and adjust is now we've rolled into our decarbonization plan resiliency, and how that building in resiliency will, in the long term, reduce risk and cost for the university. And this ties into the third point of exploring how $1 can be spent that can benefit other areas and can bring greater value to the projects, where it's addressing renewal, it's addressing operations, it's addressing comfort, it's addressing resiliency and sustainability. You know, this can be summarized in the fact that sustainability projects are often viewed in the silo, in the way that in many groups, the sustainability projects can be far-reaching and have benefits across the entire campus and portfolio. And finally, as you may have taken away from today's meeting or presentation, you have heard that we have utilized the plan, do, check, adjust approach for this multi-decade work to take advantage of technological advances and, more importantly, campus growth and climate change. It's not one study that has been put up on a shelf that we're implementing. It's a study that we're constantly reimagining as we're on this journey together.
Thanks, Michael. My takeaway before ending is Brown has had a lot of success with the outcome-based model, results-driven model. So I think You've done an amazing job with alignment of interests across all of the stakeholder groups, and having that type of collaboration among the stakeholders with your eye on the outcomes, the results. I think that's been very important to the success of Brown's achievements. So with that being said, we covered a lot of information today. If anyone has any questions at all, would like additional information on certain pieces of the milestones, we'd be happy to talk and help further. There's decades of years of progress and work that's gone into that, condensed down into roughly 25 minutes. So we'd be happy to talk through things in more detail if that would be helpful for you. Here's our contact information, and we look forward to seeing you in Boston. Thank you.